Welcome to GFM Talks. I'm delighted to be introducing Stephen Shaw to our first GFM Talks of the academic year. I'm Georgina Mulhall and I'm one of the executives for the GFM, and we host GFM Talks every month as an opportunity for colleagues within our organisation and local area to share their experiences, practice and excitement about teaching and learning. Stephen is an accredited Lego trainer, and we're delighted that Stephen's been working with the GFM in the past year with our primary learners with an abundance of Lego opportunity. And this afternoon, he's going to share his wealth of experience and excitement and knowledge so that we can understand how we can use Lego within the context of purposeful play and learning and linked to our engineering habits of mind. So Stephen, thank you ever so much for being here. I'm not sure what I'm more excited about, the array of Lego that you have on the table, or the fact that for quite some time we actually have a live audience in the Gosport STEM Centre today. So we were just joking a bit, because it's a bit of like a Saturday live kitchen here, but we do have just sat on the other side of the STEM Centre some of the GFM STEAM team who are did just wave to you, but they don't realise they're not on shot yet. But thank you for the enthusiasm, so I'll just wave back. And they will be helping Stephen with part of the session. So do enjoy the talk. Thank you very much, Stephen.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Well, it's really good to be here. Being a first in the sense of streaming a talk live, and sometimes the interaction, because this is all about hands-on, minds-on. This is all about getting in and doing to understand some of what we want to look at. So what have we got on the table? Well, we'll plod through some of it and have a look. We want to look at, on the way through, some of the pedagogy that underpins Lego education. And I say Lego education because it's not Lego retail. It's not go down the high street and buy some of this. This is separate stuff geared towards activities in school, all ages. So right through school, I've got something here that represents all of these stages that the GFM is involved in. And we'll have a look at one or two of those as well. We'll look at it in a STEAM context, in that we've got maths, we've got science, as well as the engineering and technology, as well as the creative side. The whole business of Lego education is about creativity. It's not going to be about, well, here's the instructions, build a trike. Now, you might want to build a trike because actually the activity you want to work on is much more about creating data, analysing data, in this case, plotting graphs, for example. So therefore, you might build a trike. Other times, you might just want free build. Let's build something. So I'll have a look through. I'm going to have a look at that pedagogy. I'm going to link that back into learning habits of mind, engineering habits of mind. Stuff that a lot of people, all of you across the GFM are increasingly and have been for a number of years involved with and familiar with. So we're going to start this session, and colleagues in the room are going to help me with this, with an activity that is classic Lego. Lego education came about in 1980. And Lego itself as an entity, as a business, long before that, the Lego brick now being 63, nearly 64 years old. That gives you a sense of where it's at. But prior to Lego and plastic bricks, one of the first wooden toys that Lego as a company made was a wooden duck. And so there's this empathy with ducks. Bizarre, isn't it? But these ducks come into play a lot. So what I'm going to ask the people in the room to do, they've each got 6 bricks in a bag. And what I want them to do, I'm going to give them 30 seconds, that's all. And where 1 or 2 of them have done it before, we're going to differentiate the activity. And those that have done it before have to build their duck without taking the bricks out of the bag. If you want to be really clever and take them out of the bag, then build it behind your back. But everything we do, we can differentiate accordingly. So in 30 seconds from now, build me a duck. There's rustling of paper.
Struggling a bit with the one in the bag.
Yeah, it's not because they're eating sweets. They're opening the bags. And there's just 6 bricks in that bag that they can create their duck with. I think last time we built ducks in this room, there were about 60 or 70 people, and the Minister of State for Education was opening the STEM, Gosport STEM Centre, which was a great one. March the 1st, I seem to recall it was, a couple of years ago. And what's happening now is people are building their ducks, they've got about 5 seconds left. The ones that are building them in the bag are panicking. I've got 1 or 2 people, so who's ready to show me a duck? So there's people now offering ducks to me, and I'm looking around the room. Yeah, I can see, yeah. Right, let's show the camera. So 1 or 2, 1 at a time, maybe just bring them down. There's the camera. Look, just stand in front of the table. You can show the duck in the bag. So there's one there. Somebody else can come down. Look at that duck. That's an amazing duck. An amazing duck. And so what we see here is actually looking around the room. No 2 ducks are the same. No 2 ducks are the same. And equally, when we're running our classes, we've got learners with us. We're on them all the time. Come on, hurry up. Have you done that yet? Concentrate. You need to do that quicker, and so on. And it puts them under pressure. Now, as a group of staff, we're thinking, I'm trying to build this duck. We've only got 5 seconds left. And all that same sense of urgency, which sometimes leads to panic, comes in. But when you look at your duck, to you, it's a duck. To other people, they might be a bit more quizzical and think, I'm not sure that's a duck, but I'll accept that what you say, maybe they haven't seen a duck before. Maybe they've got no real concept in their mind about what a duck might be. So it's really important. A number of things that come into the pedagogy of Lego education is the power of imagination. Nobody said build a duck like this. And I've done this with hundreds, literally, of teachers in a room where no duck has been the same. Some have built them upside down in the bag and all sorts of things, and really stretched the idea of it being a duck at all when you actually look at it. So that's okay. We're looking here about learners and their outcomes being what they want to do. Georgina in talked about purposeful play. And we sometimes, in a school context, are uncomfortable with the thought of play. We're in a classroom, aren't we? Fun. These are key words for Lego education, the engagement of learners in terms of fun and play and activity. Okay, let's just kind of have a sweep around some of the activities here. And then colleagues in the room can interrupt me and ask questions, because that will help people sat somewhere else watching this remotely, maybe questions that they've got as well. I'm going to start here and give you the kind of breadth of what comes with working with Lego education. All the software free and downloadable. So even if you don't have Lego education resources, you could still download the software and start to explore some of the things it does. You can explore that at all the key stages of learning, so you can focus on your own. You can explore that by subject. I'm a science teacher. What activities can I do that are involving science? Those sorts of ways of searching and finding that. Free and downloadable. All the activities come with lesson plans. They've got times against the activities, none of which is prescribed. All of which is down to your interpretation. Actually, I'm not going to do that bit. I'm going to go straight in there. I want to use data, not worry about building. You may build these totally separate from that activity, because of what your focus is going to be in terms of your key objectives. So here's an example. We might build a grabber. We always, in the context of Lego, try and start with what we call the engage phase. So when we're with learners, we want them to understand what we're doing. We want it to have a real life context. So I might say to you, on my way in, coming down the road, there's an awful lot of litter and rubbish and stuff just left lying around. It's a windy day today. It's all blown against the fence or whatever. We might talk about how we could pick that up. We create that story with them and ask for their experience. Have you been litter picking? And so on. And eventually they'll come up with, well, I might use a stick to pick it up. Well, let's build one. So here's a grab that I can actually go and do that with. Then I might say, well, that grab may not be the best depending what I'm picking up. So I get an alternative grab. It may be that that particular session, I want them to have an even wider context and say, can you build me something that will pick litter up, without giving them the preset idea? Now that's quite a high level of learning. and a high level of skill that you're not going to do that first time out, but you may actually look at the activity. But what comes with this again, and I'll just hold it to the camera so you can see broadly, the student downloadable, can do it online or you can do it in hard copy. So here's a little matrix that says grab a 1, grab a 2. If I'm picking these things up and we've got a plastic bottle, a Lego brick, a scrunched up piece of paper and so on, how well does this grabber pick them up? Score 1 if it picks it up well and doesn't drop it, 0 if it doesn't, and so on. So they can collate and evaluate their grab. So those are some great skills that they're picking up on the way through, not just worrying about picking litter up. Then your lesson plan, which again I've just got a hard copy of here, breaks down all of the activities in phases of learning. The engage phase I talked about, because there's the activity that's sitting in there. And if you look at some of the learning habits of mind and how you're engaging in context with. Now, right now, there are some fabulous contexts out there because we're about to shoot off into space, a new space telescope in December now. It was going to be October, but December. And if you think of that activity, some of the space and wider thinking, we've got rovers on Mars right now. There's all sorts of autonomous robots. The whole engaged phase, depending on what you're looking to do, is writ large for us. So there's some really powerful context that you can create in your learning relevant to your subject specialism or directly around the phase, the age of the children, the key stage that they're operating at. So something like Super Cleanup is just an example of how the whole thing works right the way through. Free and downloadable software, lesson plans that come with it, and the whole idea around creativity of what they build, the idea of creating that with them. Okay, so in terms of where it all goes, if we take some of the other activities around the table, then we'll pull that back into some of the pedagogy that you get a sense of what you could achieve through this. If you enjoy, remember the teacher training days and you did all those theories of education and theories of learning, if you think about Piaget and you think about constructivism, where learners are actually working on using their knowledge and developing their ideas from their knowledge to be able to move forward in their thinking. So the whole idea comes about here where we think, not only am I thinking, but I'm actually doing. And the connection between my hand and my thinking, hands-on and minds-on, as Lego Education refers to it, is very powerful. Use the scenario where maybe if you're thinking of saying to a learner, let me tell you how to tie your shoelaces. That's a long tell. That's a lot of words that they may not understand and they're thinking, I'm not sure. But if you could show them and let them try and have a go, in no time at all, for some, they learn to tie their shoes. And I'm looking around the room thinking, I wonder who can't tie their shoes here before I say too much, because it's quite a skill, isn't it? Chopsticks is another one. Anything like that you think, almost without thinking, I'm able to do that. Some of those skills that are there. And with the range of activities that come across the key stages, you can think in terms of your learning habits of mind, your engineering habits of mind, where they're visualizing stuff, they're creating things, they're modifying, they're looking at a way of doing it. It's giving them structure in their learning that through Lego might help them going forward just to organize themselves in their own learning. It's a very powerful instrument to be able to do that. Okay, let's have a brief look at one or two other things. I talked about the trike. Now, this particular model is something that we call, it's built from something called Spike Prime. If you've used EV3 Mindstorm before, such as Stevie the elephant, I'm just delighted. He's about 8 years old now, I think it's Stevie. But here he is. That's the Mindstorm's EV3. And you may recognize lots of black and grey and white. In many ways, very engineering looking, but not engaging. And what we found is introducing this new spectrum of primary colours and the engagement, particularly amongst girls, interestingly, and particularly amongst the more creative side, picking up the arts and so on, so much more can be made and thought about using a resource that's made in that way. So Spike Prime, very briefly, what comes in the resources you're using, I've got two motors attached here. One is driving the wheels of the trike, one is driving the legs of the person riding the trike, and then inside here from the hub, the clever bit, the intelligent brick, internal to that is a gyro. So when it starts going uphill, it measures the gradient internally, and as it goes uphill, all the scientists among us know that more effort is required. When it finishes its travel at the end of the code that you've set, it's going to stop, and on the learner's screen will pop up a graph, and it will show the effort and the actual trajectory of that trike going up that hill. So yeah, maybe it's about graphs, X and Y axis, and simple data, and extracting data from that graph. Lots of tools like that. So again, we can start to think in terms of systems thinking and how they're organizing their thinking and being able to work together. They're thinking then in terms of something that's not working. I might go back here and think, so if my grab is not working, why? Something simple, classic, if ever you're using this, have I plugged it in the right port? Does it say the same thing that it says on the screen that's operating the code? So the problem solving that comes in, what solutions can we create through any activity that we've got? And those solutions then are part of, again, our learning habits of mind and Lego itself working them through. Okay, I'm going to pause for half a minute, maybe a few seconds, and take any questions that may be arising from the floor. Anybody? Yeah, please.
Just so you know, in any situation in a classroom with the students that are, no, can't do it, no, not doing it, can't do it, and then realise, obviously, because we use it, how fun it is, and it incorporates so much of teaching and learning. What would you suggest to those people that are maybe thinking, and what do I do with those kids that are like, oh, I can't do it, and that's it?
Yeah.
There's guts everywhere.
So I've just kind of paraphrased the question so to make sure that it's picked up on the camera. So if you've got learners engaged in something, they just kind of throw their hands up and say, I can't do it. And it might be that they're following instructions, which they don't read very well. Their spatial perception may not be as good. They can't follow the instruction. They can't get it right. When you built the ducks, one of the things that tends to happen is you're looking around at other people and thinking, oh, look at the duck I created. Look at the time it's taken me. They finished theirs. Our learners have the same pressures. They see someone working next to them who's finished or done it first time without any prompting. So those pressures result in up under and down it goes on the table. So for me, there are things around how I would support them. I'd be saying things to them like, so how did you get? What was the first bit you were able to do? So what do you think should happen next then? And often it will come because although they built it, they can't get to move. Now, I'm never going to say to them, what you need to do is this, this, and this. I want them to think through that process for themselves. So I'll be saying to them, have a look at what you've done. Just reflect back on that. When you got to there, what did you do next? And just try and pull them in a little bit. Equally, as you get to know learning in these activities, you're going to differentiate that. So you may find some learners, are quicker at building, they're more experienced with that. You may have learners that are dyspraxic, and some of these things are very fine to work with in the technical Lego sense. I would get them, for example, to build that grab rather than the other one, because it's a slightly easier build. They don't know that, but just to encourage them, build the confidence and get them moving forward. Now, does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anybody else? One other question? All good. Okay. So when we've engaged with them, we kind of have this period of exploration. Now, by the end of this, we'd have had 5 E's. The period of exploration is, right, now we know we need to pick rubbish up. Let's build something that's going to pick rubbish up, explore some ideas. So they're looking at that creative problem solving, they're thinking what they can do and how they're going to do it, and get them working through their own ideas, not what I'm telling them to do. And then when they've done that, okay, tell me what you've done. So you may have learners that aren't very confident in communication, particularly spoken, and even more so learners that aren't confident in writing down their experience or writing down their story and things that they want to share with you. So I might say to them, okay, that's a really great build. Tell me what you did. And they'll start all of a sudden just talking about what they've done. And you might be on occasion surprised thinking, wow, I've not heard that learner speak as clearly and coherently, without that interruption about something like that. And you can use these resources for them to express themselves. There'll be something that tells me something about you. And just from what's inside these boxes, forget the technical side for a minute, get them to do that, and you're building confidence as they go. Because the last E, we'll jump to it now, is very much about evaluation. How do you think that went? Did it work? That was really good. Now, if they're not confident, use different colour bricks. Yellow brick, yeah, I think I did all right. Do you know the purple brick? Whoa, I made it. And it takes the pressure off in terms of activity, because you may recognise they're not quite finished. We're getting backed up now in terms of lesson time. All of those things become quite realistic. I'm just putting my timer back on. Okay. So, very quick sweep around again. This is a new piece of kit. I don't think anyone in this room would have seen it before. It's called Spike Essential. So this, as we now in Lego education phase out, if you're familiar with We Do 2 is kind of falling off the shelf and is only going to be supported for another 2 years, but this will replace it. But it's in the family of the learning system that's being talked about, and you can have hybrid activities between primary children, secondary children, both primary and secondary in terms of Brick Q, which we'll mention in a minute, and a whole range of integrated activities, all with lesson plans, all with structure and stuff to follow. I just happened to build, off the shelf, a little car, much smaller motors than you may have seen before, and you won't see the detail, but there's this really to die for little 9-colour matrix block. Everybody needs one of those in their life, let me tell you. That's great. If you can rig it up with sound, it makes a fantastic morning alarm. The present Mrs. Shaw disagrees, but it seems to work, so we carry on using it. Okay, here's an example of an earthquake table. So now we can talk about cross-curricular geography, for example. We can talk about earthquakes. Did a recent one in Crete. There's your context. Anybody been to Crete for holiday? One or two put the hand up, and all of a sudden you're into a shaking table that's there. Now they use this in context in space exploration, because before any satellite goes into orbit, it's put on a massive shaker table to see if it can withstand takeoff. So again, you've got real life engagement context that you can create using these resources. And I guess part of the problem we've got is you don't know what you don't know with the range of stuff that's available. Let me talk briefly about something called Brick Q, because Brick Q doesn't require any robotics. And if you're talking about science and movement in particular, and some of the biomechanics and those sorts of things, and I know that there's sets of this within the GFM. There's 2 different age groups, primary and secondary. And here we're just by way of example, maybe looking at one of the learners earlier on, actually got it in the basket, which is normal. Oh, I know it post. But look at the calibration. You can't see it perhaps from there. This is calibrated, so I can move this up and down. This is calibrated, and I can wind it back and forth to get different distances. And then I can think, what shape is the ball making as it leaves the bucket and heads towards the basket? And you can, again, in that context, start to create that story behind it. Simple robots, stuff that they can learn to code. I'll talk very briefly about coding in a second. They can learn to code. In this case, something that may push. These may lift up out the way when you don't need it, bring it back down. An amazing pair of sunglasses it makes as well. You've got ultrasonic sensor. It can measure distance, so it's very accurate in terms of what it's doing. The gyro is built in. It can recognize undulation, exactly what's happening with the Mars rover. So again, you can create context with that. And some of these activities, very powerful in terms of what you can do. Okay, maybe in terms of what else some of this looks like, comes down to what you want to do with it. And I'll just reiterate stuff around, I might want to do some coding, because actually that's the activity that I want to engage in is that. in which case you may pre-build something or keep something ready built, because the lesson isn't about building. Because invariably, they will want to use every single piece that's in the box. These robots suddenly have ears and eyes and things that you think, I've never seen ears and eyes there, but okay, if that's where you want to put them. I sometimes say to them, you can only have 20 pieces, and you've got to have these 5. You can choose 15 other pieces, just to get them thinking creatively with limited resources. Because again, the reality of cost, the reality of weight, and so on, comes into play. Get them to build those things. Now we can code with word blocks, with coding blocks, and with Spike Prime and EV3, we can actually code in Python. You're familiar with that language. All of those have the facility now to do that. Let's move towards Python. We used to use LabVIEW in the EV3, but now Python and code and word blocks is where it's at. That's much more intuitive. And I'm saying to learners when they're trying to learn to code, if you're giving an instruction, it's just got to be clear. And the what for and the what if statements and so on when they start moving it around. And there's a whole another session in terms of coding rather than the kind of broad introduction that's there. Now, I'm conscious of time. How are we doing? Let's see how long we've been going.
Until 4 minutes, Stephen.
Okay, right. We've been going 27 minutes. Okay, questions? Any more questions? Yeah, please.
Coding with the toys or the bricks, sorry. Is there a manual that comes with it that sort of tells you that, or is it sort of?
Yeah, so the question being is there a manual that comes with the coding? Not directly. However, the way that any that involves coding, so Spike Essential, Spike Prime, any of those, there's activities which introduce each of the sensors. So this is how they work, this is how the code would work, this is how you connect them up, and then it builds on that. Now, interestingly, going forward, rather than it being just, okay, here's a light or color sensor, how to use that, and it stops. It then now goes on to further screens where you can start to build up the coding language and the coding experience. So there's no manual as such, but it's very sequential, very logical. The more you do, the more understanding you get. You can voice record, you can voice instruct these things, you can instruct from color and so on. And in no time at all, your learners will be doing those things way before you are. Because that's how it works. They have no problem at all when these boxes arrive in a room. They're like pigs in a trough because the lid is off and they're in, which is fabulous. Exactly what we want. Any other questions? All good? Yeah.
In terms of future ideas in the boxes, there are now like 4 weeks.
Okay, so what can you build of what's in the box? It's limitless. So, for example, this box comes with an expansion set, which is pretty well limitless. You get wheels this size, they're very sought after. At the Beck show, we lost a lot of wheels that size. But yeah, it's pretty endless. As much as their thinking and imagination, which is the basis of it, will allow, it's there. Okay, thank you. Georgina.
Stephen, an absolutely massive thank you for showcasing an array of Lego and really emphasising the importance of practical learning, because regardless of the age of a child, practical learning is so important so that skills can be embedded to support our learners with their school-based learning and for endeavours that they go on to when they leave an educational setting. We're really lucky in the GFM that we have a whole array of Lego to access. I've seen firsthand how excited the primary phase were with much of the Lego that was on the table, and I think that you exemplified really clearly how it can be used in different contexts and aligning it so well to engineering habits of mind to make sure that we're enabling our young people to be creative and problem solve. And thank you for doing that in abundance. GFM Talks is every month. We will continue throughout the course of the year live streaming. If you're interested in accessing the GFM resource, do Google the Gosport STEM Centre and you can find out how to do that. And Stephen is superb. So for those of you watching from other local schools, do Google Stephen Shaw and you can find out how you can commission him to come and work alongside your children in your own school. So colleagues, if we could just extend a really warm thank you to Stephen.